Our next guest we have had on the program before. Margie Kay is back to join us. Margie is a paranormal and a UFO investigator, remote viewer, and author. She's hosted on X News, a radio show for several years where she's interviewed international researchers and authors, and is now a popular radio show guest, and that's why we have her here tonight. She has been instrumental in solving over 50 missing persons cases, homicides, and thefts using her unique remote viewing abilities, and I'd like to talk to her about that. She's got a book out. She does talks. She's got a lot of stuff coming. This lady is a very, very busy lady. She's conducted over 900 paranormal and UFO investigations. She's also a UFO and ET experiencer and has had her own close encounters with UFOs and extraterrestrials, which is going to be published in a new book very soon. She's appeared on KMOX. She's been on Channel 5, Fox 4, and CNN. She's been on many, many radio shows. Again, we had her here about a year and a half ago, and it was great to have her on. She is also part of MUFON. So quite a few things that we're going to be talking about. We've got her here for hopefully 2 hours. I know I was a little off on the timing. That's the thing when you try to book guests with all the different time frames, and when you try to book them from other parts of the country, other parts of the world, it makes it even a little bit tougher. But anyway, Margie's a trooper, and she's here tonight, so we're going to have her here for a while. Without any further delay, let's get her on. Margie, good evening. Welcome to AM 630 and the Fringe Radio Show.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's great to have you back again. Are you in the heat zone of the country, the thunderstorm? Boy, I've been watching the central states have been getting pounded with bad weather lately.
We have. We've had off and on. It's either terrible with tornadoes and bad rain or extremely hot. Yeah. And right now it's extremely hot, and we've got bad weather on the way. So if you lose the connection, you'll know why.
Storms are coming your way tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I've been out here. It's been really crazy. We have been in kind of a drought heat situation. Luckily today and the other day we got some storms that came in. We got some much needed rain. We're nowhere near what we really need. Not as in bad a shape as California is, but man, the weather patterns are just crazy this year. They've been getting crazy, but I mean this year seems to I don't know. It's Chicago is just starting to warm up. The lakes and rivers are still cold, and here we are already into August. I mean, fall is not that far down the street. Things are changing on the planet.
They sure are, and it just seems like the weather is getting stranger and stranger every year. It really feels like it's out of place.
Yeah, it's almost like you wonder if something is influencing this, or is it just the way it is, and has this happened many, many times before, and we're just running through another cycle?
Yeah, you get points of view from both sides, so it's hard to tell. It's hard to know what really the truth is.
Exactly. If you could, Margie, I just touched a little on your bio, but for our guests that have not tuned in and heard you before, how about if you could give us a little bit of your backstory, a little bit of your background? You are a very, very busy person. You've got a lot of stuff going on, and we're going to talk about some of those things tonight. But how did this all come together for you? How did you get into doing what you do and where you are today?
Well, as far as paranormal goes, I got into it at a very young age. I started seeing things that other people couldn't see. By the time I was about 2.5, I knew that I was a little bit different, and just kind of escalated from there. I saw my first ghost when I was 11, and probably my first UFO in about 1985 was the first time I saw something that I knew definitely was not from this planet. So I just became interested in all things strange and weird and unexplained, and I wanted to get answers, and I'm still looking for answers, so it never ends.
Well, now you have been, of course, I've listened to your radio program, and you've given talks. You have some gifts as far as having. If we could talk a little bit about this gift called a P scan or a psychic scan. You've got some gifts that were given to you that a lot of people maybe have and have not discovered, or maybe they don't have. How did that affect your life at a young age?
Well, when I was younger, it was very difficult because nobody knew what to do with me, basically. my parents were open-minded about it, but they didn't know how to help me understand it. And they knew that I was, seeing things other people weren't seeing, and I would know things before they happened or as they happened. And so by the time I was a very young teenager, my mother and father were buying me books by Edgar Cayce and UFO magazines and all types of things so that I could study it myself. And then I started, of course, heading to the library and studying everything I could get my hands on, and it was nice because then I realized I wasn't the only one that was experiencing this stuff.
Mm-hmm. But, back then, not that you're that old, but back then, people viewed this whole subject very different. And, I'm sure you could talk a little bit as far as when you with you doing your radio program, doing talks, doing investigations, and kind of getting out there and, educating, as I feel that we do. Things have changed, I think, in today's world. People are definitely more open-minded, but not that many years ago, these subjects were taboo, and even try to talk about them got people looking at you cross-eyed. And especially, at a very young age, to have supportive parents is a great thing. I think today that a lot of kids are seeing things and experiencing things, and they're getting stifled, and maybe that's changing a little bit. I don't know.
Oh, I think it is changing, and I feel very lucky that my parents were open-minded. I did have a very rough time in school. The kids all made fun of me, and they didn't understand it. So I had a hard time, and I clammed up about it. I didn't discuss it until much later, until I was about 15 years old, and my science teacher wanted me to do an experiment. And well, it turned out to be an ESP experiment that lasted for several months. And by the time that ended, I had scared him so badly he stopped the experiment, and everybody in the school then kind of shunned me, and they were afraid of me. So I again clammed up for a number of years and didn't discuss it openly. But now the climate is different. We've had so many TV shows and radio shows and movies about all different types of things. I mean, you name it, it's out there. And I really think that has helped to change, especially the internet. People are more open-minded now, and you can talk about almost anything and not have them look at you like you're crazy.
Right. Well, and again, and we always used to hear, kids used to always say, my imaginary friends. And we still hear that today. I believe that those imaginary friends may not be quite as imaginary as people think they are.
I agree with you. I didn't ever have one myself, but I know people who have, and then later in life they found out that really there was a connection to something important. And, they might have done something like warn them of something that would happen in the future or prepare them for something. Right. And it just feels like there is a lot more going on here than we can probably ever understand.
With your P-scan abilities, and we talked a little bit about this before when you were on the program, that's a gift to be able to help people or at least identify things. Is that something that came to you at an early age? And maybe you could talk a little bit about that. Being able to see inside the body. Well,
that particular gift was not really activated in me until later in life. I always had the abilities of being clairvoyant and clairsentient. As I got older, I finally became clairaudient, which means hearing. And somewhere around age 50. So this has only been 8 years. The P-scan ability became much better. And what happened was I was shown a series of past lives, and this extraterrestrial came to visit me in one of those past lives, and I saw this entire scene where I was a Native American, and I was the medicine woman for the tribe, and I went on a vision quest. When I got to the top of a mountain, there was a craft there and this mantis being, very, very tall mantis, and he spoke to me telepathically, took me on the craft with him. We went to his planet, which is a crystal planet, completely solid, smooth crystal on the outside. And then we went inside. He sat me down in a chair in a room that was, again, a crystal room, but you could see through it. And there were these 12 mantis beings standing on the other side of this crystal, and each one of them pointed this laser beam type item at me, and he said they're putting implants that will activate at certain times now in the future. So this was not only that lifetime, but many lifetimes later. And what I had done to find this out was I had a regression done by a hypnotherapist. And this is what I saw during this session. And I was trying to understand why about every year, right around my birthday, I would get some new thing or something would be enhanced. I'd be able to do something better than before. Well, when I was 50, the body scanning that I had been doing, I suddenly tried it again, and now, besides just seeing areas, if there was a problem area, I might see red around it for inflammation, or dark black for a missing organ, or possibly cancer or something like that. Well, now it changed into looking at a picture. It was as if I was actually inside the body, and that's how it is now for me. I just look and I see the problem. And then I may hear also the person's spirit guide or whoever will speak to me and tell me what the problem is. And then I can also shift into microscopic mode and look at the blood. So if there's something there that's not supposed to be there, it will stand out to me, and I may draw a picture of it or something. Since I have no medical training, I don't know what I'm looking at all the time, but I can describe it, and then the person can get that checked out. And it's so far, I've had no misses on that.
Wow. That it's almost like a miracle to some degree.
Well, some people might say that, but I believe that there are these beings who are much further advanced than we are, and they are helping to advance the human race and raise our consciousness and raise our abilities. And I asked one time, how many people are there out there like me that they have assisted? And they said 1 in 10,000. So, there are many more people, obviously, and they said that the reason that they helped me, along with other people, is to help the rest of the planet and help raise consciousness, just to show people that this can be done and that they can eventually learn how to do it themselves.
Why do you think they picked you, Margie?
Oh, that I don't know. I don't know.
Well, yeah, you do. Come on. No.
I've asked. I've asked. I think it's probably because I had some natural abilities to begin with and was open-minded and open to new things. That's, they've never really told me that I'm some extra special person or anything like that. I don't really know the total answer to that.
Do you think that maybe that the gifts that you've been given, in an early age with your parents allowing you to, maybe that's the wrong word, but your parents supporting you with different things in your life, getting you books. I mean, not saying, hey, Margie, this is craziness what you're talking about, but having a family structure that supported you. And then you started improving. Things started happening. They started improving for you as far as your skills and your interests and stuff. Do you think that maybe through your whole life of being nurtured in this in this science, if you want to call it that, maybe that opens up some eyes to some of those beings out there, those people out there, the others out there that's how they pick and choose a little bit, if you will. People that have experienced it and have had it in their blood for a long time.
That could be, and it could also be that all of this is orchestrated and planned,
Right.
and it was planned in advance who my parents were going to be, as well as for everybody else, and that we're supposed to, each of us, have all experiences.
I have to be honest with you. I have not had those type of experiences. There's a little piece of me that would like to. There's another big piece that says, maybe leave, maybe leave well enough alone. But I feel that for me, doing this program now, 6 years of doing it and bringing on people like yourself and all the other great guests that we have on, I feel this is something that I need to do to educate. So that's how I play my little part in this whole big picture. But
Well, and that's a big part. Getting the word out to the public is huge, and the more people that get to hear this stuff and get educated, the better.
right. Because again, I think it's lack of education. That's where the wild rumors and tales start to come from. I think again I can see people are being more open minded to these subjects. They're as I've said on many programs, probably sound like a broken record, but people are even starting to not challenge but question or at least have some interest in their religious beliefs. Religion is really becoming a big part of this whole picture. For so many years, is most people, are taught, we're Catholic or we're Baptist or we're LDS or whatever we are, and that's the way great grandma did it and great grandpa did it, and that's the way I did it, and that's the way my kids are going to do it, and they've been kind of caught in this vortex, if you will, and now people are finally starting to question things. They're looking at the Bible. They're reading different things in the Bible and saying, "Wait a minute, there's more to this. What's this craft that they talked about?" There's more and more stuff coming out where people are starting to be more accepting, but are starting to actually challenge their own beliefs.
They are, and for a lot of people, it's very traumatic and distressing. I've got several people I'm working with here in Kansas City who are experiencers, but they feel like it shatters their belief system, and it's a hard thing to change your beliefs and to open your mind to new possibilities. Sometimes it's growing pains.
Yeah. What do you do? That's something you do too. Is you work with a lot of experiencers, contactees, correct?
I do. I mostly send people to a licensed therapist, but it's very therapeutic in a way for people to talk to someone else who's an experiencer, especially if they're pretty new to it and they don't know how to deal with it. So I like helping people out and helping them understand what they're going through, and just reassuring them that really nothing bad is going to happen, because out of all the investigations that I've done, nobody has been permanently seriously injured and nobody has died.
Right.
So, right there, that should tell us that whoever, whatever is doing the, abductions, for instance, is probably there for another reason than to hurt us.
Right. Well, and that's the other, and I think that's the other thing. So many people, they have this fear that extraterrestrials are here to take over the planet and kill everybody on the planet, and again, a lot of Hollywood sensationalism.
Yeah. A lot of Hollywood that sells tickets to movies, and I really don't think we should be looking at that seriously, because if they wanted to do something to us, they must be so far advanced that they could have done it a long time ago, or probably not even allowed humans on the planet in the first place. Right. So that's not their agenda.
With the experiencers, and again, I've had quite a few of them on. I've had for the most part, they've all been very positive experiences. I've had one or two that, did not have positive experiences. Now you're also with the state of Missouri, part of MUFON, correct?
Yeah, I'm the assistant state director.
Now, is your role in that position? I know MUFON has kind of started to reach out in several directions, and working with abductees or contactees, that's becoming a bigger part of MUFON, isn't it?
It is, and they have a separate division that's headed by Kathleen Martin. If people want help, they can go to the main MUFON website and get contact. There are some approved licensed therapists, and there are groups that meet. We are lucky to have a licensed therapist approved by MUFON in the greater Kansas City area, and there is a meeting once a month for experiencers. And it's a private group. They have to be vetted before they're allowed to be in, and it's a safe place to talk to other people that have had similar experiences. And I know there are several groups like that that are popping up around the country.
Because some again, like as you did the statement you made, which I really took, which I think is really true. I think there's a lot of people that are that things are happening to them, and you probably see it more firsthand than any of us, more so than any of us. This has got to scare the heck out of some of these folks.
It does, and in fact, when you see a grown man that's 30, 40, 50 years old and about 6'5", shaking in his boots,
right,
you know the guy has been traumatized. And you see symptoms of PTSD after these events, especially if there's been some type of an injury. That's much more scary. But in most cases, there isn't anything like that, but it's still a very scary thing. And, when people see something come into their home that's not invited, they can walk through walls, and they look very strange. I don't care if it's a typical gray or a thin, tall tan,
right,
or a 7-foot man. It's not human, and it's very unnerving. And you feel like you don't have any control over your life.
Well, and then I would assume that when people are trying to, as you mentioned, is when people are trying to tie their religious beliefs or affiliations or beliefs, whatever you want to call it, to this, that's got to even throw them deeper down into the hole.
Yeah, because you've got so many things to question. First of all, what does it mean when the Bible talks about the spinning wheel coming down and Ezekiel going up in the craft and up a ladder? Did that mean there was a craft there to take him away? So, who are angels? Are they messengers? Are they ETs? What are all of these things? There's a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah. The I actually we have a friend of the family that had something happen to him about 20 years ago. And he just in casual conversation, he laughs it off. He doesn't make it publicly known to a lot of people, and I wouldn't mention his name or anything here on the program. But I've actually asked him to come on the program, and when we've sat there and talked about his experience, initially he just says, "Well, I was out hunting with my brother." It's in the typical story. Everybody thinks we were drunk and this and that happened, but he said, "Had not had one drink. I was out hunting with my brother. Something appeared. We know there was a huge time loss." And as he got a little bit more into it, you could just see his whole demeanor changing right in front of you. I was actually kind of scared because his whole personality started changing. And this guy is very happy-go-lucky as an individual, as a norm. And to see what he kind of turned into just with a couple-minute conversation, you could tell something very traumatic. I mean, it was a complete, like I was sitting there talking to somebody else, it was a complete change. It was enough that it actually gave me the shakes, which, it scared me, which told me if this is scaring me by the way he's reacting to just a couple of very simple questions, what he went through had to be probably 10 times that.
Yeah, and that's where talking to other people who've had similar experiences really helps. And in cases where people need more than that, then they really should see a therapist who deals with this type of thing, because they're going to understand it. You can't just walk in to any psychiatrist's office and expect them to understand this scenario or even be willing to discuss it. I've had some people go to, a therapist that they've known for years, and this has happened to them. Something happened, and they mention it, and the therapist will actually say, "No, we don't talk about things like that here. I can't deal with that." The therapist can't deal with it. Well, what does that say?
Yeah, that's some pretty deep stuff. You know, what do you do, Margie? I mean, when somebody goes through this, is it just take time to heal, or do you deal with a lot of experiencers that it's an ongoing thing, and it happens continually to them?
Well, time does heal. I will say that. I've had that experience myself. I had a couple of really unnerving experiences in the past few years that it took me a couple of weeks to calm down about, But for people who have ongoing, regular experiences, they seem to be always in a state of alert. They sleep with the lights on. They don't like the dark. Sometimes they won't even go out at night because they don't like the dark. And we're talking men and women. Their life changes. And there are some things they do that they're not even aware, or not even thinking about that they're doing. It has just totally changed their demeanor, their personality, and sometimes it breaks up marriages, it breaks up friendships. There's a lot more to this than just having the experience, because some other people around the person might not be able to deal with that, and they can't, and they leave. So it can be very rough for a person who's having experiences like this. And again, I say talk to other people who have had the same things happen so you don't feel alone.
Are there some people that want? I mean, are there some people that just they're looking for help because they want it to stop, or
Yeah. Yeah, they do, and then somebody has to say, well, there's nothing we can do to make it stop.
Right.
There are possibly some things to discourage some of the more negative extraterrestrials. There's some, positive things that you can do to try to discourage that. Things they don't like. Well, one thing they don't like is light. So if you have a light on, they're probably less likely to bother you, but who knows? I suppose if they really, really need to do an experiment or something, they're going to find a way.
Right. And as I've often said, too, and I don't know if you agree with this, I think a lot of the experiments, I don't necessarily think from the perspective of a gray or whoever is doing this. I personally feel, and I could be wrong, again, I could be talking out my hat here, Margie, but I don't feel they're doing anything wrong. I think whatever experiments are going on, it's their job. Maybe they don't understand human compassion or emotion. I've read, so many different books and have talked to many people that say a lot of the grays are kind of like almost like a robotic species. They're workers, and they're just they're there to do a job and get it done, and not necessarily with compassion.
Right. And what I've seen in regression for myself, I have seen grays abduct me, and they are doing a job, and they're trying to get done as quickly as possible. They're on a timeline. There are other people on the craft, and they must be, I've come away with this thinking there must be thousands and thousands of people that they do this to on a regular basis. And it seems to go in, periods of time. Say, most abductees will say they go about 6 months in between visits, for instance.
Right. All right, everybody, welcome back to Fringe Radio. Our guest tonight we've had on before is Margie K. Again, Margie, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. We were talking a little bit right before the break as far as, again, people that are abductees, what they've been put through, and in some cases continue to be put through, and of course with the grays having some sense of insensitivity. Is that something that you hear quite a bit? Hello, Margie.
You there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had the mute button on.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Thought the Grays got me.
That doesn't work. Yeah, people report having different changes in their lives after they've had an experience, and psychic and intuitive abilities is one of those things that seems to happen. It's not uncommon.
Do you subscribe? And it sounds like I know what the answer is going to be, but the people that have these multiple abductions, that they've started from a very young age. Do you believe that's true? I mean, it's not just some ship flying over your home in the middle of the night and goes, let's just go down there. Do you think there's some event that triggers things way back when, and this cycle just goes on for a long time?
Well, after doing this for so long and talking to so many different people, I've come to the conclusion that people who are abducted it's not just a one-time deal. It's lifetime. And if they were to be regressed, they would probably find out a lot. And it probably goes back to infancy when this happens. So, and they follow family groups. Who knows if they're following the DNA of the families, if they're trying to help improve things as the generations go on, which is what I suspect, or alter us for some reason, whatever that agenda might be. But it looks like the human race is improving. It seems to me that the younger generations, at least as far as psychic abilities go and intelligence, are improving in these groups of people. And it's not unusual to find abductees who have been longtime experiencers, and their family, and their parents, and their children, to be highly intelligent and have an interest in certain subjects and also have psychic abilities. Many times they're afraid to even mention it or talk about it, and you don't find it out until much later after you've gained their trust that these other things are happening. I mean, I can tell you that I believe most investigators are probably not asking some questions in those regards, but I do, and so I find that there really is a lot more to it than the public realizes.
Let me ask you, are there some people, and maybe this is a stupid, well, I'm not going to say it's a stupid question, but are there some people that have gone through, they've been an experiencer their whole life, and then maybe 40, 50 years down the road find out about it? I mean, you might have answered that for me, but people that just there was never no signs left. They were I don't want to call brainwashed, but the memories were taken away, and they've gone for many years, and then just realize it way down at the end of their life.
That does happen. I know quite a few people that has happened to, and when they have the realization that it really has gone on their entire life, that's a shock. Yeah. They might have a regression, and they find that something happened when they were a child, and they're shocked to see that. But I can tell you, when I do an investigation, a lot of times if I have a question in my mind about that person, and I may not put this in any reports, but I will remote view the situation to see if indeed there was something that happened, or if the person's pulling a hoax, or if they are just, not remembering whatever. And then I'll go back and I'll look earlier in their life, and I'll usually see that there has been involvement their whole life. It would be very rare to just have one incident.
Do you find hoaxers along the way?
I do. I have found 2 in all of the investigations I've done. Not very many people bother or take the time to do that.
Right. I know that in the in the paranormal, and I know you're a huge paranormal investigator. I know that one thing here I've had in the studio some of the local paranormal groups that have come in over the years, and they talk about people that call them up. They'll all get a phone call. There's a few particular people that are just lonely and they want somebody to come in their home. Is what happens. But I would assume that in playing the part of an abductee, you'd have to be a pretty good actor, and again, maybe even have some mental issues to even want to go down that road.
Well, the hoaxers I've had have just been sighting hoaxers. They don't go to the depths of abductee, but they will say that they saw something strange or continue to, and they want attention. And sometimes there could be a little bit of a mental issue there as well, and you just have to try to gradually ease yourself out of this situation, or they just will keep constantly calling you and emailing and taking your time up, and there's really nothing there.
One of the best abductees that I ever had on the radio program in all my years of doing this is a gentleman by the name of Jesse Long. Does that ring a bell to you?
No.
Jesse Long does not do a lot of interviews. Thomas Reed actually gave me his phone number, and there's not a lot about Jesse, but Yvonne Smith did his regression stuff. It's all on YouTube, and I had Jesse on the program. Again, he granted me an interview. It's not something he does. He doesn't go on any of the bigger programs, like Coast to Coast or anything. He's very private, but he did give me 2 hours one night. And I'll tell you something, Margie, when I got off the phone with him, I couldn't believe this guy. Long story short, and I just wanted to bring up a couple talking points about talking about Jesse, was his abduction started at when he was 5 years old and continued all the way on until he was 39 or 40 years old. But the problem that he was having is he would get abducted in the middle of the day, coming right out of the house, going to school when he was a young child. And he would literally walk out the door. You can listen to the interview, it's in our archives. He would walk out the door, he would describe looking around and everything getting slow, like watching the trees blow, but they would somewhat slow down, turn around, knew the craft was there, would go through quite a bit of medical and rigorous medical tests, and then actually returned right back to in front of his home, and time would seem to pick right up again. And he went through this for 35 or 38 years.
Wow.
And he tells a very different tale in that he wanted to kill these beings. A couple of times he actually made some attempts while he was on the table. He wanted to grab whatever they had and cut them and hurt them, because they continued for 40 years. He feels that they've just ruined 40 years of his life. But what was so interesting is that these huge craft would be right over his home. He had a coworker, I believe he was in the window business. He used to travel from Arkansas to Texas, and sometimes a coworker would go with him. They were window salespeople, and he said he would be driving down the interstate on a bright blue, clear, sunny day, and a craft would appear next to the car, and he would literally look at his coworker and say, "Now you do see that over our heads. You can't see the shadow it's casting," and this happened on many occasions, and coworker said, "I don't see nothing. I don't know what you're talking about."
Mm-hmm.
And then as he described it, again, things getting blurry and slow, and the abduction happened again. He feels he was abducted probably upwards of 100 times.
Yeah. I've heard that story before. I've had some strange things like that happen to me with time change. Whenever there's a time shift, I look around because I'm think that something is about to happen. That's most abductees don't mention something like that, but I'd say maybe 5 or 10% do. So it does happen.
Yeah, it's. That has to be a pretty good mind game to play on somebody, an individual, or a group of individuals, where again there's something, one or two people feel that they see something and everybody else standing there does not see it.
I had a case here in Kansas City a few years ago where a woman was walking down the street in the middle of the day in downtown Kansas City in between large buildings, and she was headed to lunch with some girlfriends. There were about 4 or 5 of them walking together, and suddenly this craft moves in over the top of the buildings, and it's huge, and it's blocking out the sun, and she just stops dead in her tracks, and the other gals turn around and look at her, and they, what are you looking at? And she says, don't you see that? And none of them saw it. They were all standing in the same place. Not one of them saw it.
Wow.
So this happens. Only the people who are involved are seeing it or experiencing it. The other people who aren't, it just doesn't exist for them. I believe it is another dimension, and it's another reality, and that person that slips into it for just a few minutes, and they have that experience, and then they're back into our third dimension reality.
Right. Well, that and I again, the whole dimensional thing to me is very confusing. But trying to get a grip on it, trying to get your mind around it. But I mean, they say what the science has proved that the human eyes can only see we can see 2% of the light spectrum. There's 98% that we can't see. Who knows what's floating around in that 98% that we can't see?
Well, and psychics, so-called, see more of that light spectrum, just like cameras do. So for some reason, my brain is wired to see more. And I don't think there's any mystery or anything mystical about this. It is probably scientific, and it's just the way our brains are wired.
Right.
So I hear more, and I see more. It's still there. It's readable in some fashion, but it exists. And then the camera, of course, gets more of the light spectrum. And if you want to see things, just start taking pictures with the camera.
Right.
Inside the house, outside the house, wherever you go, just take hundreds and hundreds of pictures and then go back and look through them, and you will be surprised what's there.
Right. We've had Wilbur Allen on the program a couple of times, and he now works. He's a photographer for National Geographic. Worked with the White House for years. Of course, he's an experiencer, and he talks about, just like you said, you can't go out and take 1 or 2 pictures. His camera systems shoot upwards of 100,000 frames a night. He takes hundreds of thousands of pictures and then uses his tools to go through and diagnose the photos. And just like you said, what you'll see in the air, what you'll see in the sky will blow you away when you're taking a vast amount of pictures. Not just 1 or 2 at your iPhone, but you set up the equipment to let it just roll for hours. It is amazing, and the speed stuff comes across the sky that you can't even believe is there.
Yeah, it is amazing. I've got one of my witnesses here in Kansas City who became very interested in the subject after he had an experience, and he went out and bought all kinds of equipment. He's got night vision surveillance equipment set up outside his house, the perimeter, and inside. And he has, one of the most amazing pictures I've seen. And he's got hundreds of pictures of craft and little and tiny orbs with beings inside the craft. But the most amazing picture I ever saw was taken by his night vision outdoor camera system. He was standing on the porch looking outside because he sensed that something was there. And standing right in front of him, inches from his face, is an ET looking him right in the eye.
Wow. Did he capture that photo?
Yes, he did.
There doesn't seem to be, my understanding is, well, and again, talking to you and some of the other researchers, there's not a lot of non-hoaxed photos out there. It seems like they're very few and far between.
I think there are a lot of non-hoaxed photos out there. I've seen so many of them, and I've got some witnesses who take hundreds or thousands of pictures, and there's no way that these people have the time or the energy to hoax every single one of them.
And they've captured photos, huh?
Oh, yes. I've seen things you would not believe. And a lot of these they will not go public with them. They'll show an investigator, but they won't go public because they don't want attention. They don't want anybody to know what's happening to them.
Right. Very, very interesting. I, yeah, again, well, some of the stuff I think if the general public saw it, probably scare the living wits out of them.
Yeah, but like you said, it's so easy to hoax.
Right.
Now with digital, the only way that you could actually probably prove something with a camera that everybody would believe is with a 35 millimeter, because it's in the negative.
Right.
So now with the technology that's out there, nobody is going to believe anything that's put out there, in a photograph. But I took the advice of a photographer, and now I'm carrying a 35 millimeter with me as well.
And when you see something strange, you start snapping away.
I plan on it, yes.
Yeah. Margie, we've got to take an NBC News break. Can we keep you for maybe another half hour on the other side? I know we it's a little bit late on your end, but maybe we could talk about your events coming up and your books and all kinds of stuff.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, sounds great. Our guest tonight is Margie Kay, an amazing lady. You can check out her website at margiekay.com. She is definitely dedicated to her craft, maybe even her spacecraft. She's definitely dedicated to everything. We're going to talk about her books. She's got some events coming up. I would love to hear about that. And again, she's the Assistant State Director for MUFON in the state of Missouri. So again, as we know, with many of the MUFON people, a lot of work.